Hey, I'm some glarp ZB, and ever since I popped out the egg sac 1500 rotations ago, there has been one rule beaten into my brain by every authority figure I've ever known. You all know exactly what rule I'm talking about. It's the only intergalactic law that will get you executed throughout any galaxy. Even if you go to a planet that doesn't have the death penalty, they will put you in a vaporization chamber the second they find out you broke this one rule. Even before you are old enough to create matter out of thin air, you know to stay away from Earth. But most aliens don't know why they need to stay away from Earth. On many planets, if you try and ask why Earth is off limits, the only answer you'll get is why doesn't matter, just stay away. On some others, you'll be told that getting involved with Earth could lead to the complete and utter destruction of your planet and culture. Pretty ominous, right? It's not like the reason why is some forbidden knowledge that you're not allowed to talk about out loud. It's just a difference in education systems throughout the universe. There's no real reason for earthly studies to be in any standard curriculum. But naturally, these simple explanations aren't enough for a lot of aliens. Teenagers especially, the second they get their saucer license, they beeline for Earth thinking they can sneak past the planetary blockade, and they join the eternal nothingness of space. It's a waste of both extraterrestrial life and premium rides, so I've decided to share my expertise on the planet to explain why you shouldn't bother trying to invade or even abduct anything from Earth. I spent about 150 years monitoring the planet and scraping information from their rudimentary satellites for a college credit. And see, the interesting thing about the Earth is that the terrain and most of the life on the planet is not a danger to a majority of aliens. The real reason they won't let us invade Earth is the humans. Now on the surface, humans don't seem like anything special, even on their own planet. They aren't particularly fast or strong, their skin is squishy and easy to puncture, they don't even produce any kind of venom. But much like many planets, humans are the dominant life form on Earth because of their intellects and their ability to communicate with one another. And you might think, oh, they're like the tall greys where their amazing minds make up for their physical weaknesses. But honestly, humans being the top dogs on Earth says a lot more about the other life forms on that planet than it does about them. The most powerful weapon at humanity's disposal is the nuclear bomb, something my kid made for a science fair when he was 7. Believe it or not, humans actually die when they're exposed to uranium. Could you imagine that? I could not live without uranium. I put that shit on everything. Their main means of travel is still reliant on wheels. They have spacecraft, but it can barely leave the ground and often blows up before it can even reach orbit. They've had sentience for 300,000 Earth rotations, and they still kill each other over variance in the color of their skin. And after 300,000 rotations, they're only just now getting to their mandatory AI takes over and the populace needs the revolt arc that every society goes through. They're still stuck on the PS5 for fuck's sake. Humanity is primitive to say the least. On paper, the lowest ranking species in the UG, the little green men, could low diff the Earth. So why are we so set on leaving the planet alone? Well, to answer that question, we have to bust out our handy dandy Multiversal browser. Now these only became available to the general public relatively recently, so I'll explain how they work real quick. You tune the device to the specific frequency of whatever universe you want to observe, and you'll have access to any data that's ever been recorded in that universe. A lot of aliens, especially those who never pursued a higher education, have the misconception that there are an infinite number of universes, and that's just simply factually not the case. There is a quantifiably finite number of universes. But there are several main universes that have displayed the concept of alternate universes within the main universe. So conceptually these are alternate universes, but we call them sub-universes because they only deviate from the main that they're attached to. Anyway, there being a finite number of universes means the Multiversal browser is a pretty amazing tool. It's led to countless technological advancements because it allows us to gather information or check our research against another universe's. And it's also thanks to the Multiversal browser that we know to stay away from Earth. For the purposes of today's video, we're going to start by talking about the universe designated as RK-03.
If you don't have anything else to say, you need to leave.
Debbie,
Get out of my house.
you don't mean that.
Get out of my house!
We'll talk later.
The big difference between our universe and RK-03 lies with the Viltramites. In our universe, the Viltramites are renowned for their generosity. They have free clinics on pretty much every planet, they bring advanced medical technology to lesser developed planets, they deliver food and medicine to war-torn solar systems. You'd think with how charitable they are, they're actually in favor of making contact with Earth, but no. They've been against the idea ever since a visiting Viltramite was killed on Earth some 2026 Earth rotations ago. Regardless, the Viltramites of RK-03 are nothing like the ones of our own universe. They are, for lack of a more scientific term, planet-conquering monsters who feel nothing when they snuff out other life forms because they believe themselves superior to every other being in the universe. Obviously that's shocking to hear, but it also might be a bit confusing. The Viltramites of our universe aren't pushovers by any means, but there's a fair amount of species ranked above them in the UG. Why wouldn't one of those species put a stop to the Viltram Empire of RK-03? Well, that's because the Viltramites in RK-03 are some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy through a millennia-long eugenics program. It was less of a program and more of a purge. They just killed any baby that couldn't bench 3 plates the second they came out the womb. So the Viltramites were an absolute terror on the universe that needed to be stopped at any cost. And the universe fought back, but they really didn't stand a chance until one of the Viltramites made the fatal mistake of trying to conquer Earth. The Viltramite warrior Naolan came to the planet with the intention of bringing it under Viltram's control without much fight. He was far and away the strongest being on Earth, a fact he demonstrated when he eventually killed the mightiest heroes the planet had to offer. So how is it that in less than 25 rotations after his arrival on Earth, Naolan was fighting against the Viltram Empire, defending not just the Earth, but the rest of the universe too? Thousands of rotations of programming and dedication to the Empire undone in less than 25. How did the humans of RK-03 turn one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy into a weapon to be used against their enemies? Oh, I'll tell you how they did it. They fucked the shit out of them. Naolan took a human mate and wound up betraying his entire species for her. And eventually it wasn't just Naolan. A lot of the remaining Viltramites wound up turning on their leader Thrag because they eventually took human mates, which led to Naolan and his offspring managing to amass enough support to overthrow the Viltram Empire. The worst dictatorship in the universe's history was brought down by human genitalia. Despite the fact that humanity did the universe a service here, that's still a pretty terrifying thought. Because it's not like brainwashing. We have anti-brainwashing technology. This is a complete betrayal of your homeworld, a total ideological conversion. Naturally, you see that and you have to think, what if the wrong human has sex with the wrong alien? Based on human history and what they post online, a majority of humanity is the quote-unquote wrong human. What if one of them managed to bag a celestial sapien? Now, I know what you're thinking because my species has developed mind reading. You're thinking, some Glarp ZB, this seems like a bit of an overreaction for just one universe. And it's precisely because I predicted that line of thinking that I have several more examples. Let's talk about universe CB88. CB88 is a universe much like our own. The only real difference between the two universes is that in CB88, Bubbles Blinky never founded the Auguste Protection Alliance. I should probably elaborate on that because to the uninformed alien that sounds like a bunch of nonsense. See, there's this planet that is both scientifically and affectionately referred to as Clowntown. And the dominant species on this planet is, you guessed it, the clowns. They are not everyone's cup of tea. They're quite a smart species, ingenious inventors, but it's almost impossible to get a clown to take something seriously. They're generally seen as hooligans or delinquents because anytime a group of clowns visits another planet, the law usually has to get involved, even though the clowns usually don't have ill intentions. They just overcommit to the bit. They're a carnivorous species, and on their planet, their main food source is the Auguste. However, at one point, the Auguste became endangered due to overhunting by the clowns and poachers from other planets. But thankfully, one clown, the aforementioned Bubbles Blinky, took the threat seriously and formed an alliance with several other surrounding planets. So the interplanetary branch of the alliance was able to almost completely stop all Auguste poaching. And on the planet side of things, Bubbles Blinky worked with lawmakers and scientists to devise a much more sustainable means of keeping the population fed without decimating the Auguste population. But in CB88, this alliance was never founded, and thus the clown's main food source went extinct. I'm not going to dive into all the ramifications of that, because quite frankly, I just don't have time, but one of the ramifications was that a fair amount of clowns became poachers themselves. And they travel from planet to planet, illegally capturing wildlife to bring it back to Clown Town for food or for profit. And one such group, led by a Captain JoJo, decided to make a play for Earth. And not a single member of Captain JoJo's circus survived. Now, the clowns aren't exactly heavy hitters in the UG, they're really more of a knowledge check than anything, but their technology and near invulnerability would still mean the humans don't stand a chance. And for the most part, they didn't. According to data gleaned from scanning the wreckage of the clown's big top, the invasion went off without a hitch. They had successfully captured an entire human town, but the beginning of the end came when 4 human intruders snuck their way into the big top. Almost immediately after they breached the perimeter, the intruders were discovered by the only 2 female clowns in JoJo's circus, Daisy and Rosebud. Daisy and Rosebud managed to separate the intruders, but the thing is, all 4 of the intruders were male. So instead of raising the alarm or killing the 2 humans they had managed to capture, the clown women were seduced and promptly, let's say, satisfied. Following that, the 2 humans were able to reconvene with their team and successfully destroy the entire ship and all clowns aboard. This is an example showing that it isn't just dumb alien men falling for human women. You alien ladies are just as susceptible. Now let's move on to the next universe, AT-84.
That part to me.
What are you gonna do?
Hey, Vegeta!
What? Bulma!
Pull your stubborn hat out of your princely Saiyan butt! Quit flailing around and let the others fight too!
I refuse! If I can't win this on my own, then I'd rather die trying!
You're being a total man baby! Now grow up and get down here! And if you don't, I swear I'm never taking another bath with you for as long as I live!
I'm stepping aside. You can take it from here.
AT-84 is drastically different from our universe. There are a lot more provable deities in this universe than in ours. There's also an undeniable and oddly bureaucratic afterlife. AT-84 also has some of the most dangerous humans of any universe. The majority of them are just as weak as your regular humans, but there are a few that have physical, planet-destroying capabilities. And even fewer of them have intellects that'll rival some alien species. A lot of the information in this segment comes from an organization of time travelers. However, despite a select few humans being more impressive than the average, these few humans are still absolutely dwarfed by several alien species. One such species, and pretty much the only one we have in common with AT-84, is the Saiyans. Now in our universe, Saiyans are a species that pride themselves on their art. They're a society of poets, actors, musicians. Quick sidebar, if you ever get a chance to see the True Freaks perform live, absolutely take it. The Demon Broly is the most legendary rocker of our time, and getting to hear Bathe in Your Blood live was one of the greatest moments of my life. But despite the fact that the Saiyans exist in both of these universes, you can pretty much forget everything you know about our Saiyan. The Saiyans of AT-84 were not the lovable, pacifistic slackers of our universe. They were a warrior race, planet conquerors like the Viltramites, but instead of doing it for the personal glory of their planet, they did it for money. They were essentially a vicious, worldwide band of mercenaries. Thing is, when you make your living by going around destroying other societies, nobody feels that bad for you when somebody else inevitably blows your whole planet up. According to the records kept by this Time Patrol, less than 10 Saiyans survived the destruction of their homeworld planet Vegeta. 2 of these survivors were a low-level warrior named Kakarot and the Prince of the Saiyans, Vegeta. If you were wondering whether or not the Saiyans still do the fucking vegetable name gimmick in this other universe, there you go. Kakarot and Vegeta have grown to become some of the strongest beings in not just their universe, but in any universe. Not counting godlike entities and literal gods, there are very few mortals that stack up to Kakarot and Vegeta. Fun fact, me and the other guys, they used to monitor the Earth and monitor the alternate Earths. Anytime we would find somebody really strong in another universe, we would have this debate like, do we think they could beat Kakarot? And let me tell you, we almost never got a unanimous agreement on any of those debates. So that should put into perspective just the crazy amount of power that we're talking about here. And yet Kakarot and Vegeta live on Earth peacefully. They are from a race of conquerors, but most of Earth doesn't even know they exist. And as you can probably guess based on the general theme of this video, it's because they both have human wives. Kakarot's wife, despite not being one of the few humans capable of destroying the planet, is the only person that Kakarot has ever been afraid of. And the prince of all the Saiyans, Vegeta, is so completely subservient to his human wife he may as well be wearing a collar and a leash. These are 2 of the strongest beings in any universe, 2 individuals who regularly spar with gods, and yet neither of them can even come close to beating human pussy. Now it's at this point you may look at the previous 3 examples and say, sure, they're powerful, but they all come from species that actually have sex. Obviously they could be beaten through sex appeal. Why can't an asexual species invade the Earth? The answer to that question is very simple. It's because they're not safe either. Let me tell you about Universe RS-13.
Curiosity turned to appreciation. Appreciation turned to fondness. And fondness turned to love.
Stumbling upon RS-13 or deliberately checking up on it after you've already looked at a bunch of different universes using the browser is a bit of a jump scare. I mentioned that the browser lets you check any data that's ever been recorded, which usually means when you first check into a universe you are greeted by a ton of information from a ton of different planets. If we didn't have Control F, it would take forever to find the information you're looking for, but when you tune into RS-13, there are a grand total of 2 histories. There's the Earth history, which isn't anything to write home about, but there's some interesting stuff in there. The planet's pretty geographically different from the norm. And then there's the history of Homeworld, a planet in RS-13 that serves as the origin point of... I don't really want to call them a species. It's not quite accurate to call them a life form. In the universe, they're called gems, and technically speaking, that's exactly what they are. But it'd be a lot more complicated to give your wife one of these gems for her birthday because they're sentient and capable of projecting a body made out of hard light. Since these bodies aren't technically real, they can shapeshift to change their form at will, they don't need to eat, sleep, and if you were to cut their heads off, it wouldn't destroy them. Damaging the projected body will only temporarily disable the gem while they reconstitute their form. You have to completely shatter the gem itself to stop one of these things for good. So already they're a nearly unkillable fighting force that never needs to stop to rest or even take care of its soldiers. On top of everything else, they're rocks. They don't age, meaning even if your planet was capable of putting up a fight against them, they could always just beat you out through attrition. But I'll tell you right now, there is only one instance in their entire history where the gems ever encountered true conflict. It's unclear just how long these things have existed in RS-13. It's unclear how they even came to be. But what is clear is that they've been around doing what they do for long enough that no planet has ever had a chance to evolve to a point that they can contest the gems. What the gems do, all they exist to do, is to make more gems. To create more gems, they need geological material. The process through which they harvest these materials and create more gems saps the life force out of the surrounding area to the point that nothing can survive there. When one part of the planet can no longer produce gems, they move on to the next one. And the entire time they're choking the life out of the planet, they're also terraforming it to their liking, until they eventually reach the end result of a completely dead planet with an entirely artificial world built on top of it. And then they move on to the next, not for food or resources, riches or freedom, expansion for the sake of expansion. Say what you want about other colonizers throughout intergalactic history, at least they need or at least want the stuff that the place they're invading has. The gems don't want anything except more, like a virus that isn't reliant on carriers, running rampant through the universe, killing everything in its path, never encountering any kind of roadblock or resistance until they reach the planet Earth, where, for the first time ever, the Gem Empire's expansion is stopped in its tracks, where the Gem Empire fights in and loses its first ever war, and this irredeemable scourge on the universe is repelled, all because one gem got some human dick. According to both Homeworld history and the recording we scraped from that Homeworld ship earlier, a Rose Quartz, a warrior drone, went rogue, snuck away from work during the colonization of Earth, met some primitive humans, fucked them, then decided to lead an entire rebellion against the Gem Empire, which ultimately culminated in Rose Quartz completely destroying Pink Diamond, one of the 4 leaders of the Empire, which led Homeworld to retreat from its colonization of Earth. The most powerful and advanced society in the universe defeated because one member of that society took back shots from a human, and it wasn't even a good human. These motherfuckers were primitive. They barely had a grasp on agriculture. They had nothing close to indoor plumbing. He probably fucking stunk. But he laid it down so heavy he convinced a member of a much more powerful asexual species to spend the rest of her eternal life protecting the Earth. Craziest thing about the whole situation is I went to Earth's history, they never built a statue for this guy. Just absolutely bonkers. Now, I know what you're thinking at this point because my species developed the ability to read minds some time ago. Some Glarp-ZB, these gems may be asexual, but they also look enough like humans that it makes sense that a human would try and have sex with one. My species is both asexual and completely non-humanoid. Surely we could invade the Earth with no issue. On paper, sure. In practice, let's talk about Xenomorphs for a minute. I don't have to tell you much about Xenomorphs, some of the nastiest little fuckers you could ever deal with. I would rather try and buy a saucer from a Melmacian ship dealer than have a Xenomorph infestation. First things first, they're fucking filthy. They slobber everywhere, they tunnel into your walls, they goop up everything. You can't even kill one without staining your carpet. Having Xenomorphs is just a really mentally taxing situation. Even once you get the exterminator out and you swear you've gotten rid of all of them, you'll still sometimes see them out the corner of your eye even though they're not actually there. I actually have a buddy, when he was a juvenile, he took his Zog out to the backyard to, let it go to the bathroom and all, and a Xenomorph tunneled from underneath the neighbor's force field and killed his Zog. His neighbor was a real piece of work, didn't take care of the house at all, so there were a ton of pests over there, so my buddy's dad went next door and took all the guy's bones out. With Xenomorphs, there's also the element that, they range and how dangerous they are for each species. So for some species, they're just little nuisances, little annoyances, but they are legitimate threats for others. But just generally speaking, nobody is happy to see a Xenomorph. For whatever it's worth, they're a delicacy on some planets. Though some Glarp-ZB fact, I have actually tried Xenomorph. A bunch of other aliens told me that, oh, that corrosive blood really gives it a nice tang, but it didn't agree with either of my stomachs. But my editor Nad absolutely swears by Facehugger Souvlaki. This is my editor Nad, he's a pretty good alien. The point I'm trying to make is that no matter how dangerous they are to you personally, nobody wants to be near a Xenomorph. Nobody wants a Xenomorph anywhere on their planet. Now, on some versions of Earth, the humans are the same. On a lot of other versions of Earth, they fuck them. That's right, a fair amount of humans across the multiverse crack Xenomorphs. These same creatures that got you running for the spray can got the humans licking their lips. Like, in all my time monitoring Earth, it is astounding how often I came across human and Xenomorph pornography. Obviously, I can't show any of that on SpaceTube or else I'll get deatomized, but just trust me, it's out there. Listen, I'm a pretty open-minded guy. I try not to judge. You know, you like whatever you like, you feel however you feel, alright. But the amount of humans who see a Xenomorph queen and their first thought isn't fear or panic, it's goddamn she's thick as fuck, is actually disgusting. Like, I am 100% on board with keeping these primates in the dark forever. Do not ever let them know other life forms exist out there. Like, that's just what's best for the universe, but it's also kind of what's best for them. Like, if we were to make contact with Earth, it would be disastrous. They'd be out there, they'd be fucking everything. They'd get a bunch of allies and they would inevitably make a play for power in the universe, and you know, who knows how that would go. Maybe they get wiped out for it, maybe they wind up conquering the whole universe. But one thing I can say would happen with absolute certainty. Humans are going to unlock an entire universe of other species to have sex with, and all of them are going to be worse than just having sex with another human, and that is tragic. Like, why even leave the planet? But with all that being said, I hope this video helped you understand why we need to stay away from Earth. Sorry this video took so long. I got kind of a spotty connection where I'm at right now, so it's just taking a while to upload. I really hope it doesn't wind up on some website other than SpaceTube. Like, it bounces off of satellites in a way that it winds up on some random video website on some random planet. I'm sure it'll be fine.